Bonjour, bonjour tout le monde. Hi everyone, and welcome to Nurau Talks. I'm Justin, neuroscientist and CEO of Nurau. We have developed a science-based solution that reduces labor turnover by better supporting manager well-being at scale. As you must know, people don't leave organizations, they leave managers. So it's my pleasure to be hosting these fun LinkedIn Lives with some of the finest managers and people leaders I know from Canada and abroad. People who inspired me and continue to inspire me as I navigate the challenges of entrepreneurship and leadership. So in just 15 to 30 minutes, we'll try to dive into the subjects that matter most in the hopes that it'll make us more effective, performant, and resilient. But before we begin, today is a special day. In fact, it's my first time actually hosting a Neural Talk event, which was formerly hosted by my amazing colleague Vivian, who's on maternity leave starting today. So we're sending her good vibes today and every day. For those with us today, I invite you all to interact through the chat. We'll see the chat popping up. This is an interactive experience, so if you have any questions for our guests, I'll try to sneak them in. Today, I really have the pleasure to speak with a good friend of mine, the Honorable Frank Baylis, Canadian serial entrepreneur in the medical device space and former member of Parliament. The latest division of Baylis Medical that Frank and his partner Chris Shaw sold was crowned as the biggest medical device deal in Canadian medical device history. This is the third time they actually sold a division, and Frank is arguably a big inspiration to a lot of entrepreneurs across the country. So, hi, Frank. Thank you for being here.
No, it's great to be here, Justin. I'm happy to be seeing you this way.
Thank you so much. And these are big titles, big company, big taglines that we see in the Globe and Mail. But I think the first business that you started was in carpentry or in painting. Am I right? So how did that start?
So you're bringing me back there. Yes, my name is Frank. That's Baylis, and my friend's name was Brennan, and we called ourselves B&B. And I guess that was before you had student painters or whatever, like student pro painters. So we were doing painting and carpentry, and that for a lot of it was for our high school teachers, and that we did a lot of that. And we were entrepreneurs. We actually hired some of our high school friends. That was very difficult because when you're like 16, you don't think you need to take orders or listen to your other buddy that's 16 years old telling you what to do and that. But yeah, that was our very first experience in entrepreneurship,
That's
I could say.
really interesting. How did you recruit these friends of yours? Were you just friends and you're like, hey, let's do this together? Or
You know what? It was myself and my partner, and I wanted to expand. That's my nature, my business interest, and make us bigger, and just do more jobs, hire them, and that. But I realized afterwards it was kind of challenging when you're that young and you're trying to boss people around that are the same. We're not boss them around, but direct them, and they're like your friends that hang out with you. And like, I'm not taking orders from you or whatever. But it was a wonderful experience. It did teach me a lot too. The guy I was in business with, Jock Brennan, is probably my best friend, but we weren't that compatible as business partners. And I learned that lesson early, that it's not your best friend that's necessarily your best business partner.
Right.
It's a good lesson to learn, that people that need to complement that and complement your skills, someone else's skills. So I learned that lesson early from working with my best friend. And I thought it's not just about friendship, it's about complementary skills. And also, most importantly, complementary vision, that you want the same things. I wanted big, big, big. He was more like, let's get a truck, the two of us do the jobs and this, that. And I was like, no, man, let's hire people and just, really make it more than it is. But yeah, so that was a couple lessons I picked up there.
That's a great lesson that you learn early on, but to divide friendship and working your work life together. That's two different things. Something my grandfather actually always told me is like, working is one thing and friendship is the other thing. When I spoke to my grandfather in his office, it's a totally different person. You know what I
Is
mean?
that right?
Having those boundaries was very important to him. So if you fast forward to today with Chris Shaw, your new partner, do you find that your most recent and legacy partner, do you find that you met that complementary match, and how did you figure that out?
Absolutely. So Chris and I were together at University of Waterloo. I'm an electrical engineer graduated in 1986 from the University of Waterloo, and Chris was in my class all the way through. We met in first year. We were both co-op students at the same place in Toronto. And right away, I could see, and because I had that experience, we're great friends, Chris and I too, but I could see that what he was looking to do and what I was looking to do was completely in line. And then he had a lot of skills that I didn't have, and I had skills that he didn't have. And I could see right away that, we want the same things.
Mhm.
We would drive together to them, and he would bring something to the table, and I would bring something to the table. And there's an old saying, if you agree on everything and your partners and you see it, then one of you is not needed.
Really?
So you do have to have tension. You do have to have different ideas, and you have to push and pull. So there's nothing wrong with that. You
Yeah.
have to respect each other's viewpoints, and I respect his viewpoints tremendously. But we together, 2 + 2 could equal not 4 but 5 or 6 if you have the right partner and you work collaboratively together.
So do you find that you were lucky in your life to have found that partner? Because I speak to a lot of entrepreneurs who keep trying to find that ideal partner, and it's not easy, right? Where
Absolutely. Listen, Justin, I've been lucky my whole life. There's no question about it. Anybody that knows success knows there's 3 ingredients. You got to work hard, you got to be smart, but you got to work very hard, and you have to be lucky. And when luck comes along too, you need to grab it. So everybody gets lucky in certain ways,
yeah,
but you need to grab that luck when it comes along. But you're correct. A lot of people struggle with partnerships. I I didn't, but I did have that experience from the past, and I knew, in the back of my head, if you're going to work with someone, that there has to be certain alignments. There's
yeah,
certain alignments, and that's true for any type of partnership, whether it's a marriage. A marriage is a form of a partnership. You might love someone tremendously, but you don't like the places they want to visit, or you want to have 10 kids and they want to have no kids. These are fundamental things that make it more difficult to have a life partner than
sure,
or business partner. But certain key ingredients that you have to be aligned on.
right. That's and do you think that's the case for employees as well? Like when they come into a business, do you think that employees are looking for that shared vision? I imagine.
Listen, 100%. That's a great point you just picked up on. And I would say the younger generations, they're more educated, they're more mobile. The world is a smaller place. They know their options.
Right.
And if you really want alignment, and for us, when we're in the medical device field, well, guess what? We were looking for engineers, technicians, marketing people that wanted to contribute in the medical space. They had made that decision before they met us, and we were a vehicle
For
to do
them.
that. So when we were hiring people and we saw that there was an alignment, as you touched upon, with their world vision, they want to create devices
Right.
or market or help teach doctors, provide clinical support in medical device area. Well, guess what? We come along and there's a great fit there.
Absolutely. That's an essential part. We hear it very often from HR professionals, like, how do we find people? And in today's environment, it's so difficult, but how do we find these people who, share the values that we share as an organization? And the first thing is that we have to define our
Yes.
own values as an organization. They have to be super, super clear so that an employee can, resonate, identify them, and then resonate with them. But I think it also comes from the top down. You have to embody them as a CEO, and as your leadership has to embody them, and that trickles down.
But so the values, just people confuse something, first of all.
Yeah.
Baylis Medical has my last name, but I didn't actually start it. My mother started the company. She started in the early 80s. I joined her in 89, and then
Okay.
Chris joined her in 90, and there were just 3 of us. And she had been importing and reselling products. And then we decided we're going to start developing our own products and exporting them around the world.
Right.
But the kernel of the business was and my mother's had a set of values that are really important to our business. So as you touch on them, and she had a certain ethos. She was a nurse, and she cared about the patients. So her view was like, I care about the patients even more than making money. but she was focused on the patients. And she set a set of values that I've always tried to maintain. So as we got bigger and bigger, at one point my mother retired. She's since passed away, 5 years, but we really worked hard to tell people the values that she inculcated into the business, what they call patient centric. It's now got a name, but when she started it, it didn't even have a name, but it meant that you're focused on the patient. You're not focused on the doctor. You're not focused on the administration. You're not focused on the device. You're trying to do the best for the patients. And that mindset of hers is something so critical that I work so hard to keep that alive. Because as you just said, those values were incredible. And I really believe, as you pointed out, that the alignment between the people working as part of the team, the organization, and those values, if you find people that you're aligned and you're working together in concert, it works great. And I'll give you a quick anecdote. A young guy, our first sales guy, he did something right when we got started, and it saved the company a bit of money, but she didn't think it was the best for the company. So she calls him and she goes, "You're fired." And he's like, "You just started 3 months ago." And he's like shocked. And he goes, how am I, Frank, how am I going to go home and tell my parents? I said, "Listen, go work hard, stay out for a week and come back and mea culpa, say you're sorry to my mom, apologize, and say you won't do that again, but that you'll keep the patient's, well-being first and foremost." And that was real. It's a bit funny. She let him know, because I knew my mother. She was tough, but if you apologize, so she said, "Okay, I'll give you another chance." And it was always a running joke between them. "I'm watching you." She lived the story there is she lived the values, Justin. She didn't just say them. And you probably know this in an organization. Some organizations say them, but they don't actually live them. She lived them.
Like some organizations would just write them, just a whole list of values that ChatGPT can write and then just put it on the website. But when you talk about your mom, who's also a civil rights icon here in Canada, just for our audience today, she embodies those. She embodied those values, and it resonated with people because she lived it. And another point was that the value that you mentioned, patient-centric approach, is simple to understand. Everyone could align themselves towards that one value. So it's easy for the whole organization to say, whatever I do, that's what I have to keep in mind. So there's also that idea of making it simple to understand.
And what's interesting on that terminology, patient-centric. Now, tons of med tech companies use that today. What happened was there was actually 25 years ago, a lady, a nurse, doing her PhD in nursing. She coined that phrase. And what it meant is like the nurse is different than the doctors, different than the technician. The nurse is about the patient. The doctors, I got to do this operation. The technician, I've got to run this machine. The nurse is just there. I'm looking after the patient. So my mom didn't say, "I have this idea, we're going to be patient-centric." She just had this value system. And since it's got a name now, but that value system is inculcated in our fabric. And now I see many, many medical device companies starting to use, "We're patient-centric. We're patient-centric." So, and they may or may not be. I'm not questioning that. I'm just saying though that particular value did come up in that way.
It's a very natural thing. It was a natural thing for Gloria, your mother. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So, we actually met each other through a mutual friend who I think is here today, Alan Alexander. So shout out to him, who put us in contact a year ago at Startup Fest. I think you were a pitch competition judge or something. And the first thing I remarked when we met was your humility. And your humility really contrasted from some of the other characters that I met during the festival. So first of all, what keeps you down to earth through all that?
Well, I just mentioned one. My mother was like pretty tough.
That's a huge part of it, right?
But
Your mom.
honestly, Justin, years ago, I had bought into this concept of the self-made man. That's the term that you used to use, self-made man.
Mm.
And I'll tell you something, and then I came and I worked for my mother's company, and I wanted to do the thing all about myself. I just wanted to be the self-made man because I thought that existed. And over the years, I realized what a load of crock.
Mm,
What a load of crock. I started to think, especially because at one point, and I'll be honest, I didn't want people to say, "Oh, your mother started the business, so you just got." Okay, my it was very small when I joined my mother, but it still was something, and it was still a kernel. But more importantly, I started to think, okay, self-made man. When you're born and you're a baby, and everybody here was a baby, you didn't feed yourself. Okay, nobody. If someone didn't feed you, look after you, you'd be dead in a day or two. Okay,
yeah.
so someone helped you all along. Not only that, then someone, whether it was your mother, your father, your parents, your brother, sister, someone made sure you got to school. Someone
Yes.
made sure you got educated. Someone made sure you were fed the whole way through your life. Someone nurtured and cared for you. And you probably, all of us had great school teachers, some not so good, but many that cared about you, helped you, gave you something. And
Sure.
certainly along the way, I've had physicians, business people help me, support me. So then me to come along and go, well, hang on a second. I'm the self-made man here. I realized what a load of crock. And then I started to think more about it, and I thought, it's teams and great people and people aligned, partners, you name it. That, and I'm just one really, I really think I'm a small part of the success. And we've had amazing engineers. I didn't develop all these products. I have my name on a few patents, but we had hundreds and hundreds of patents. So these brilliant people, we had brilliant people make the products and patent them, sell them, support the doctors, teach the doctors. So then one person tends to get the credit for it, but it's not true at all. So it's not a fake humility. I've been there, I know it, and
Oh,
I'm very uncomfortable when people point to me and say, "You did this, you did that," because
yeah,
it's not true. I
yeah.
didn't. I had a great. I've had the great luck, as you mentioned, of having a wonderful team surround me all the way along, starting with my parents, my mom and my dad.
That's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful thing. 'Cause a lot of people are going on into entrepreneurship just throwing themselves in, but you were guided. You had that shining that north star saying, "Hey, these are the values that you should have in this
Yeah.
business." This is, so it still brought you to another level, and supported you at the end of the day. But how did that affect your leadership? First of all, like you were working with your mom. She was, I imagine, president at that time, and you were working with her. How did how is that dynamic, son and mother relationship in a business, and how did that influence your leadership?
Well, um, my mother was a very powerful person, very demanding person.
Like that.
Um, but it was also like any family business, there's challenges in family businesses. And what I decided pretty early on to keep the balance, I said, and your grandfather, you just gave the great example. Outside of that office, he's your grandfather. Inside the office, it's not like. And I
Ooh,
said to my mom, look, when I'm in your house or outside this office, you're my mother, I'm your son. In the office, we're partners. We bought her out at a certain point when she was retiring and all that. But I said we're partners, and the dynamic changes. But I kind of made a point to myself is I'm not going to wreck my relationship with my mother or my father just for some business. And so I really tried to stick to that. It's not easy, but no business is easy. No business, it doesn't have one type of a challenge or another.
mhm.
So people that think that okay, that was easier, this was they're fooling themselves. I have not met anybody that's run a business that was all running downhill. There's every business has different challenges.
Wow. It's a really interesting dynamic because it comes back to boundaries. It comes back to having strong family values,
Yeah,
right? If you don't have those strong family values, it's all gets mixed together. So it came back to saying, "Hey, I'm your mother when you're at home, and in the business, I'm your partner." And
yes,
that's just you have a very big you had a very big opportunity and chance to have that relationship with your mom.
yeah,
It's a beautiful thing.
yeah. And as I said, I've given talks about family businesses. There's always family dynamics that do pull into it, but realistically, I worked hard to keep them two separate things. It's never easy like that because your mom's always your mom, and she always wants to tell you what to do,
And she wants the best for you all the time.
which is whatever. That's life. But I was lucky because my mom had great vision. She had my mother was an operating room nurse, and
Okay.
she started the company, and she had worked in operating rooms, head nurse, where they cut you open and do stuff. And the world was moving to what they call interventional medicine, which you probably heard of catheters or guide wires or stents in
Yeah.
your heart, where before they would do an open heart surgery, now they could go in through a catheter and deliver a stent, open up your vessel. And she had said the world is moving in this direction. So a big part of our vision and our success was implementing some of her wonderful ideas to not specific to a catheter, but go in that direction because that's the future.
Very cool. Very innovative, right? Because she saw
Yes.
it. She said, okay, the world's very, very cool. And when we think about those times, you might have not have been 863 people like today. So you were a small team. And when you grew that team, did you guys take classes in leadership? How do you have a secret sauce in terms of recruiting the great team like that? Because I still remember our last, or I don't know if it was our last conversation, but I was in your office and I was talking about Nurau and how we enable manager well-being and train managers at scale. And you're like, this is so important. You don't you don't imagine how many hours I took to try to train a future manager at Baylis Medical just recently. So
Mhm.
how many hours do you spend doing that? And how important is it for you in terms of development of employees?
Yeah. So as we mentioned earlier, I knew that I needed a great team.
Mm,
And one of the values, we had four foundations, which were we were a high tech company. So we're not low tech. There's nothing wrong with being low tech, but we were high tech, meaning we're probably going to be the most expensive option the doctor has, but we're high tech. We were customer service based, patient service based. I mentioned that. We were then obviously we had to have corporate social responsibility, but the fourth pillar was employee development.
uh-huh.
If we were going to be successful in a high tech customer focus, we had to keep investing in our employees. So we would, if they wanted to do courses, if they wanted to do seminars, if there was an opportunity to anything that we could see to invest in our team to make them better, it would flow back to us, flow back to the organization. And this again, my mother was a Bajan lady from Barbados, and back there, education was a big pillar in her worldview that you need to be educated. So, for example, my name is Frank Baylis, but my older sister's Dr. Baylis, my younger sister's Dr. Baylis, and my brother Dr. Baylis. PhDs in medical doctor. So I'm the least educated
Oh my
in
God.
my family.
What went
But,
wrong, Frank?
but she was very strong on education and investing in education. So we took that as one of our pillars. And to the point I made earlier, if I'm going to succeed, I need the whole team rowing in the same direction, and I need to invest in that team to make them better, to make them stronger. So that sense was really important. Is how can we make the team better?
Right,
Making the team better makes the whole company better.
right. And a lot of organizations try to put like a return on investment on that. So how do you put a return on investment on that? Is it just you know that it's important, or is there
I didn't really think like we didn't really think along those lines. If it's $10, it's worth it. If it's $11, it's not. No, it was let's invest in people. I mean, obviously, if there's something ridiculous, we're not going to do it. But as long as it made sense, we were ready, willing to invest in people, to
right?
invest in their skill sets, whether it's an accountant taking the next set of rules or an engineer going to a conference, or even for example, people that manufactured our devices in the labs, in the clean rooms, we would take them to see a case. Okay, so why do they need to see a case? Well, okay, you're developing this thing, like we were developing this device, but now I want you to see how it's used so that when you're doing it, you appreciate the quality that's involved and why it's so when we're demanding on quality, you see the patient at the end of it. So we're educating them too, so that when they're working on something and I say, look, it's really, really important we have high quality, they go, yeah, I know what he's talking about because I saw the doctor use this on someone. And if it didn't work, I said, okay, well, that's a big problem.
So get people to be involved and seeing where that work is, where where does it lead? Like, what's the impact of what
Exactly.
we're doing?
Right.
It's actually saving lives. This is the proof.
Yeah.
Very cool. And what is that a piece of advice that you would share with entrepreneurs like myself, people leaders who are starting out in our space and who are sometimes feeling alone or feeling crumbling under the pressures of business. You went through all that, I'm sure. So
Absolutely. Look at, I have a tremendous respect for all entrepreneurs, whether they succeed or not. There's no such thing as real failure if you step up. For me, someone that steps up and tries it, and whether it works out or not, I have tremendous respect for that. Less so I have for people that talk about it and said, I would have done this, but they didn't do it, or I was going to go into business, but the guy was going to go partner with, he screwed me, or, my wife didn't want me to do it or whatever. I heard all these stories and, okay, great, you did it. But for me, the man or the woman that stands up, whether alone or with a partner, and gives it a shot, an honest shot, you've lived your life properly. You've done what you're meant to do.
mm,
Um, and I knew when I started off, I had saved up a bit of money. I just got married. I had no money, so I had to live with my mom and dad for the first year, because I was living in Montreal, and apartments back then were super cheap. They were everywhere. You get an apartment for nothing.
not the
And
same.
my dad said, "Look, Frank, it's not a good idea. You just got married. You shouldn't live with us." I said, "Yeah, I know, Dad, but I've got this much money. It's got to last me 2 years, because in 2 years I got to see if I can make enough money to keep going." And I had this whole plan. If I fail, well, at least I did 2 years, and I'll go. Back then, you could go as an engineer and work in the Middle East and make a lot of money tax free. And I was going to come back and try again. So I'm going to be a business person. I'm going to do that. And I gave it that full shot, and I gave it an honest shot. I didn't do it half-heartedly. I jumped in with both feet. I had sacrifices, but I did it. Now, today, people look at, oh, what a great success. Yeah, but no, we had a lot of failures along the way, but we invested and we took the chance. And I knew what I was doing in doing so. And then, so to answer your question, I encourage every person that wants to do entrepreneurship to get into it, but get into it with your eyes open. Don't get into it thinking that it's a piece of cake, because then you're going to be in for you're going
Hello,
to be
right.
in for some tough education, if I can say that. I have not, like, I've never met anybody that said that's been successful. It's been a cakewalk, and I've never met anybody that's done it by themselves.
Right. So finding the right team right from the get-go. You said putting some finances aside. So you had, 2 years worth, according to you, of how much you can survive with, and say, okay, I'm going to spend 2 years of my life trying to develop this, and these are my financial resources, and you know it in
Yeah,
advance. That's a great thing, because a lot of people just don't
yeah.
know.
I knew, like, look, the way my thinking was, if I don't make any money, I can last for 2 years. But every dollar we make, okay, that stretches my life.
Another
So,
name.
and I had charts at the beginning that were like monthly, watching, your cash flows monthly and that, and it was not easy.
No, that's
But it's okay. It's okay. It gave me the discipline to run a tight ship,
yeah,
not to waste money. So
right.
when you asked about investing in employees, I never thought that was a waste of money. That was an investment, and it grew and grew and grew, and all that led to more and more successes. And in that light,
Right.
but yes, I did have a target, and I said every dollar I can make now just adds an extra week or 2 weeks to my
Yeah,
survival.
I think I have the same kind of mentality, as well. I think all entrepreneurs do at some point, but it was so, so helpful and inspirational, Frank. Thank you for being with us. I know we're almost out of time, but on the last thing, where do you envision the future of work? We talk about the future of work a lot. Where do you see it going?
Wow. That's a great idea. First of all, I think the work that Nurau's doing, and where your vision of developing people, is a fantastic opportunity. The After COVID, what happened is, and if you'd have told me before COVID people can work from home 5 days a week, I said no friggin' way. But I was wrong. I was wrong, and I think COVID's really opened our eyes. So the way of work in the future is going to be very different. And artificial intelligence is coming like a tsunami. It's going to change things radically. I can already see it happening.
Mhm.
But I think there's tons of opportunity, especially for entrepreneurs.
Yeah,
If you're ready to take it and not do same old, but you say, look, I have a new way of doing something, a new vision, I would encourage you to go for it, because there's so much disruption happening in the workforce and the way things are done, and it's going to, from what I can see, accelerate. So I see tons of opportunities. optimist in that sense. So
It's
yeah,
always a great time to be an entrepreneur,
yeah.
especially when there's opportunities out there, but there's always opportunities. It's
Mm.
great to have you, Frank. Thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for being with us. Merci à tous nos invités qui sont ici avec nous aujourd'hui. Mark your calendars. We're having another interview, another Neuro Talk at the end of next month, so the 28th of July. Like our page, visit our website, neuro.com, to see how we can better equip and support your managers from the front line all the way to the top line. Keep well, everyone. Don't forget to take care of yourselves. Have a great weekend. Thank you so much.